I have Christina Wehry on the call right now. Thanks for joining us.
Of course, absolutely. Happy to be here.
Excellent. Well, you are a licensed holistic health practitioner. You also do massage therapy here in San Diego, and you
Yes.
work with people who have chronic pain. And I love how on your website you said if you're not willing to put into work, then I'm not the therapist for you.
That's exactly right. I forgot that was there, but yes, I did say that.
So basically, for those of you who are tuning in right now and about to listen, you are going to kick our butts into shape and be our coach. That was
Uh,
that's
yeah,
the
I
takeaway
mean,
I got from that.
you know, so definitely I wouldn't say that I'm going to kick your butts into shape. That's not my goal. My goal is not to get anyone necessarily to a certain level of fitness or physique. That my goal is not aesthetic. It has nothing to do with how someone looks. My work is really everything about how an individual feels, and specifically with respect to relieving pain symptoms. So yes, I mean, definitely there is a lot of building strength in the body. There's a lot of creating space in the body. But fitness is the tool. Fitness isn't the goal.
Yeah, that's an important distinction. And a lot of people do have that mentality, or they might have that old perspective of a personal trainer yelling at them to do the last repetition, or the nutritionist or lifestyle coach who's telling them to not eat this and not eat that. So it's good to make that distinction and realize that we're just trying to give recommendations to help everybody. But, when we were talking a little bit before, you have a real fascinating story. So I'd love for you to just share a little bit more about your background and your experience with chronic pain.
Yeah, sure. So in 2007, I was living in Australia and I was hit by a city bus as a bicyclist. And there were a lot of complicating factors, but ultimately I didn't have any imaging done of my spine after the accident. And as a result, had a number of undiagnosed injuries that resulted in years and years of chronic back pain. I would, sort of seize the way that many people do, and I wouldn't be able to really do much for a number of days. And then, ice, heat, rest, get a little massage, get a chiropractic adjustment, sort of 1, 2, and you're good to go. And I would sort of eke my way through with all of that, and not really knowing too much about what I should be doing to get myself permanently out of pain. I sort of was in the mindset of, well, this is what I deal with now. This thing happened and now I'm in this state, and I'm just going to have to sort of course correct as I have a problem. And I think that's a really common experience for a lot of people with chronic pain, or who have gone through a particularly traumatic, physical incident. And this is despite the fact that, a majority of my family are doctors. Like no one ever really, took the time, or maybe just, never thought of saying, well, there are actually other things that maybe we should be talking about. So anyway, ultimately I woke up one morning in the spring of 2014 and was in such excruciating pain that I genuinely couldn't walk. I couldn't move. I couldn't sit. I couldn't stand. I couldn't lay down. I couldn't any of the things. It was all really terrible. And that was the impetus for my putting myself back into school, leaving my previous career, and trying to understand better really how pain is created in the body, why pain persists in the body, and what we can do to eliminate that experience, or at least relieve it.
Like you were saying too, there's so many professionals that are involved, and it sounded like you were working with different people. And I run a Facebook support group for sciatic nerve pain. Some people that are diagnosed with sciatica, or they have pain that's shooting down the leg, and they often feel very overwhelmed with all the different exercises that are out there. There's so many YouTube videos. There's advice on Instagram. They hear from chiropractors, from acupuncturists, from massage therapists, and they are just getting bombarded by information. And so describe a little bit more about what a holistic health practitioner is, because it sounds like that's a good blend of a lot of different approaches.
Yeah. Well, so I can tell you a little bit more about what I do, but I want to talk for a second about what you identified as a key component of the frustration for many people with chronic pain. And that is the confusion of not knowing who to listen to or what to do, being sort of bombarded with lots of recommendations, lots of information, and not really knowing how to sort through it. And this is actually a key component of the way that I work with people, because um, unless there is a very specific diagnosis, and even sometimes in that case, no one knows with 100% certainty what protocol is going to relieve symptoms for any particular individual, right? We can have a really good estimation. We can say this is likely going to work, but we never know. And in any case, moving towards resolution is really about the experimentation of, trying this thing, moving through the duration of time that we should expect to see results within, and seeing what happens. And so one of the things that I do with my clients is teaching them how to sort of move through the scientific process of exploration within their own bodies, so that not only, in the experience of working with me, but then moving forward, when they're given all of these different options, they're able to sort of sort through them and identify which ones they want to start with. They can move through this process of experimentation. They can see what happens in their body. They can take that mindful awareness observation, use that to inform what they do next, and sort of systematically move through the possibilities so that they can feel empowered by the options rather than, sort of inundated by them. And so then, just to answer your question about the holistic health practitioner side, so what I do, what I've been educated in, is nutrition, massage, and then kinesiology. So my particular blend is I work with my clients to identify common causes of inflammation from their diet, and we work to eliminate only those things that actually trigger inflammation for them, because again, every body is different. I do corrective movement, and we, again, sort of work to identify where are the obstacles within their body, where are the limitations, where are the restrictions, what's holding them back, and then we work to move beyond them. And then on the massage side, so I practice neuromuscular therapy, which is a sort of highly specialized form of deep tissue massage. And there's some other, sort of tips and tricks that I throw in there along the way. But the goal of neuromuscular therapy really is to help the nervous system to downregulate, to sort of, decrease the volume on the particular pain signal.
With those different techniques, is there a specific order that you like to work in? Do you address corrective exercise first, or do you simultaneously get into everything, or is there one that you start with?
That's a really great question. And this is one of the "it depends" answers. And to be honest, most of my answers are "it depends." It depends on the individual. Often, often my clients come to me with certain things that they are already really willing and eager to explore, and other things that they are either not willing to consider, not willing to explore, or it just hasn't ever really been brought to their attention. So they kind of need, a little bit of familiarization with it to sort of get the buy-in. So I work with my clients where they are, and I allow them to open up to the next phase as they see that change is happening. And in my experience, when someone sees that results are being delivered and positive change is happening in the body, they're that much more willing to do the next thing. And I think, we've sort of talked a little bit about change. One of the most difficult obstacles in creating change in your life is that willingness to try the new thing. We sort of get stuck in these early, phases of habit formation, where we know maybe, or we've become aware that a change is necessary. Maybe we know what the change is, but then we kind of hem and haw on it. we sort of like, we straddle the fence. We know that we should, but we really don't want to. We don't want to, explore, maybe this person's wrong. We give ourselves all these reasons why maybe it's not a good idea to try this new thing. So one of the things that I've seen that sort of helps push people over to the other side of that fence is results, right? So they've seen, okay, this person has told me to do this thing and it worked. Maybe this other thing that they're telling me is also going to work. So maybe I'll give that a whirl. And that way, we don't face as much resistance with the new thing. Every once in a while, I do get someone who comes in and they're just like, I heard that you're amazing. Everyone raves about you. Tell me what to do and I will do it and I will bow at your feet. But that's rare.
Yeah, I like how you're describing getting small wins.
Yeah.
You don't have to accomplish the end goal quite yet, but if you can just win at a couple small goals, then that's letting you know that it works. And oftentimes that's one of the key components to a successful rehab process. If I'm working with somebody in the clinic, it's the same thing. If they could reduce pain in a 30-minute session, they're going to be much more willing to come back, much more willing to continue with their exercise, and you're on the same page. There's agreement because they're starting to see the results.
Yes.
So to get to that point, a lot of people might have a barrier in their head for whatever reason. Maybe they saw a bad physical therapist. Maybe they heard from a family member that this technique didn't work. And they're trying to come to a decision or a choice of what to do. How does somebody initiate this behavior change process where they have a problem like pain and they need to find a solution to it?
Yeah. So you gave a couple of really specific parameters, and I'm gonna zoom out just a little bit and get a little bit more macro in my answer. I think in any change process, it's really helpful to be very clear on the desired end result. So one of the things that I do with my clients, especially around mindset, is we set a wellness vision. And the wellness vision, especially with my clients, very often includes being out of pain, but is much more encompassing than that. So we sort of go into the entirety of what health is. So we talk about mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual well-being, and we sort of set this wellness vision. And then from there, we begin to reverse engineer accomplishing those end goals. So we sort of say, okay, if the end goal is X, then what are the necessary steps we need to take in order to get there? Because obviously, for example, I have a client right now that I'm working with, and one of his aspects of his wellness vision is to reduce his A1C level. So currently he's at a 9, and he'd like to get it down to a 6. So we can't, say, okay, we're going to do that, right? That's not a tangible action, right? So we have to sort of reverse engineer what are the individual actions that we need to take in order for that result to be actualized. And then inside of those, those steps, what are the smaller steps that maybe we need to take in order to accomplish that? So I'll give you an example. One of the steps that we have to take for him is to get his nutrition in line. Now, there are many ways that you can get nutrition in line. So for him, we had to identify what had worked and what hadn't worked in the past. So he knows that for him, a total overhaul of the way that he eats all at once isn't feasible. He's tried it in the past. It didn't work. He doesn't want to repeat that experiment because he's seen that it's not successful for him. It's not productive. So instead we say, okay, let's then start with getting really clear on what it is you're actually eating right now. Let's just start by understanding where we are now, and then we can begin to identify the small changes that we can make. Maybe it's a 1% change on a daily basis, right? Maybe it's removing one bad habit a week. Maybe it's not even that. Maybe it's removing one bad habit one day out of a week, and sort of having that conversation. What feels reasonable? What feels like something that you can successfully accomplish, so that not only can you get one step closer to the ultimate goal, but also we can eliminate any kind of guilt. One thing that we know from the psychology and neuroscience of change is that when change is negatively motivated or negatively rewarded, it's much less likely to ultimately be realized. So when we can motivate change from a place of positivity, moving towards something that we want, and then have these, as you say, sort of these small wins along the way, that change is much more likely to take root and then to be fully realized. I
Yeah,
think I
that's
started to answer your
yes,
question.
it's a very good answer, and I like how you zoomed out because I gave a more specific example, and then you're bringing somebody to an awareness and an understanding of the big picture of what they're trying to accomplish.
Right.
Because a lot of times they might be setting somebody might be setting an unrealistic goal, or they might be setting a goal that's not even necessary. Really, it's like, why do you need to work out 5 times a week? Sometimes
Exactly.
you question the reason why somebody wants to do something, and there may not be a really good reason for that. So then you can adjust your goal, and it could be something that they're actually much closer to.
Yes. Well, and so one thing that you just said is so important, and this I think does kind of tie back to your original question of, this specific example of a person who has worked with a physical therapist, they've worked with a chiropractor, they've, heard things from other people, nothing's really worked, they're kind of frustrated. One thing that I tell everyone who starts working with me that, feels this way or they've had this experience is that it's never what you do, it's how you do it. And I do think that there is, and I'll speak very specifically about my work, there is a unique sort of recipe that I have. And I think I've identified some of it, but I think others of it is just kind of like, I don't know if I'll ever really know what that is, that magic. But the how of the way that I work people just seems to deliver better results than what other people have been able to achieve. So sometimes it really is practitioner specific. And I'm sure that you, in the course of your experience in this field of physical therapy, you've seen practitioners who are fantastic and they just seem to get result after result after result for their client. And then you've seen others who really aren't so great and they don't really ever get anything done, right? And we don't have to name names, but I'm sure that you have a couple in your head. And so sometimes it is a matter of trying something that might look or sound similar, but with a different practitioner. And with a practitioner that has a more proven success rate, right? A practitioner who has more results under their belt. So I think that's one piece of it. But the other piece of it that you talked about is the thing that you've heard actually necessary? And that do you need to be working out five days a week for 2 hours, right? And so sometimes we just get bad intel. And maybe that person is trying this, and again they're sort of repeating the same experiment, the definition of insanity, right? Doing the same thing over and over, expecting different results. So that's why, again, I sort of come back to this scientific process of experimentation. You have to sort of try something. If you don't get the desired result, you got to take that information and consider it valid, right? You don't say to yourself, oh, well, my experience doesn't matter, which is what I think a lot of people do. They sort of say, oh, well, whatever, maybe XYZ. And again, they sort of go through all the possibilities in their head. But if you've tried something sort of over and over in the same way with the same person and not gotten the results that you need, something has to change or you are going to stay in this cycle.
And when you change what you're doing, I want people to realize too that there are a lot of options.
Yeah.
There are options to change too. So if somebody, because oftentimes they might have tried 2 or 3 things or more, and it hasn't helped them, and they get very discouraged, and they come to a conclusion that they can never get better.
Yeah.
So they are determined that this pain is chronic. It will not get better. It will not recover. And they've come to terms with it, and they've decided that they're going to live with this pain for the rest of their life.
Which
So
is heartbreaking.
It's very heartbreaking. And it's something that I do see with people that have chronic pain, especially sometimes in our support groups. We're just at this point in these groups, we're nurturing people. We're allowing them to connect with one another. I haven't offered any kind of programs yet, but I'm just seeing how, what people are needing and what they want in this different kind of group setting that we have on Facebook. And some people are determined that there's no solution, that they just cannot get better. They can't get out of this pain. And that is oftentimes when you, that's a barrier that you'll encounter too, as I'm sure that you've worked with a lot of clients. And same thing with me, if you're seeing somebody one-on-one, you're able to answer that question a little bit more clearly, and you're able to work with this person to clear up any misunderstanding and to help reframe the conversation. So how would you have a conversation, or what kind of kind of education can you provide to help somebody that believes that they cannot get better from pain, that they don't think that there's any hope, and they've really come to terms that they're going to be living with this pain always?
Yeah. So that is a very specific conversation that is not I'm going to tell you this and you're going to believe me. That's a conversation that has to be structured very specifically in my experience. So with someone who's sort of feeling this way, I sort of do a scaled down version of what I would do over a 3-month period of time in a sort of change mindset program that I offer with my clients. And that looks like this. We discuss where they are currently. We discuss where they'd like to be. Then we sort of have a conversation about, what do you think you need to do in order to get from here to there? And as soon as you ask that question, no one in my experience has ever said, there's nothing I can do. No one has ever said, there are no changes that I can make in order to accomplish this goal. Everyone knows at least 2 or 3 things that they could do differently that would likely have a positive impact on their experience. Maybe they don't know every single thing that they can do, but maybe they know, I need to eat a little better. I know that I don't eat very well. And in the specific example that you're giving of sciatic pain, right? One of the things that we know is if you are sitting for long periods of time, it's going to exacerbate the pain. So very often that person would likely say, I could probably move around a little bit more. I could probably eat fewer fattening foods and maybe lose some weight. I could probably try yoga again. I could you know what I mean? Like it would be very difficult for me to imagine a scenario in which someone said nothing. You say like, okay, where are you now? Where do you want to be? What could you do to get there? And they say nothing. I could do nothing. I am perfect. And so once you open the door and they identify for themselves changes that they can be making, then they've already admitted that there are things they could do. And then it's our job not to convince them that they could do something else. It's our job to identify what actually will benefit them and give the very highly specialized information that we have in order for them to do it properly and in the right sequence, right? And so that's the way that I would take that conversation.
Great. I like how you're being really specific about it, and you use the word depends, even though some people don't like the answer, it depends. But really that's the right answer, because what you're really saying is that it's specific to each person's situation. You need to have a conversation because you have to identify what the person's goals are. You have to identify where they're currently at with all these different aspects of their life that you're going to be working on. You're going to be working on their nutrition. So you want to know what their habit is. What are they eating in a typical 24-hour period of time? You want to know where their mind is. What are they thinking right now about the nature of pain? What are their past experiences? What is their current anxiety state like? How much sleep are they getting? And then also with their exercise routines. I mean, what do they know about exercise? What mistakes are they making with even movement as well?
Yes.
And there's so many different things to work on. So I love how you have a system approach to it. I think that's the real key part of this, is that there's structure, and you're using the scientific method to reach an end goal. It's not guesswork. Yeah. Even if sometimes the scientific process might be specialized to each person. So I have a scientific process and a system. You have a scientific process in the system, but we each have our own that you're putting the person into. And so probably one of the biggest mistakes that somebody could make is just doing 25% of one system, 25% of another system, and then getting really frustrated and thinking, well, it's not working. It's
Right.
because the system wasn't really followed. I mean, you can't guarantee 100%, it's going to be, you can't guarantee somebody's going to get out of pain 100%, but you certainly could almost guarantee that somebody's going to make improvements
Yes.
and
Yeah.
at least live a better quality of life and have a better capacity to do more activity and just enjoy other things that they may not have done before. So,
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah,
100%.
it's a really good point. What are some common obstacles that people might face with initiating change? What are some of the things that you've seen that are some of the bigger obstacles that get in the way?
The biggest obstacle that I've seen people encounter is this thing that's between our ears.
Glasses.
The glasses, yeah, no, the thing that's housed inside this thing. I truly think that one of the biggest obstacles that people face is their own internal dialogue. I can't tell you how many excuses people will give me when we say, okay, well, let's try this thing. Oh, well, and then it's just the laundry list of all of the reasons why this thing isn't going to work. And so there are a few ways that we get around that. One way is cool, you might be right. You might be completely right that this isn't going to work. Are you willing to give it a try? Yes, right? And if they say no, I'm not willing to try it, then say, this is one of my favorite, this is from my previous career. My previous career is in sales and marketing. It's the if I will you. So then I'll say something like, if I do something with you, right? So let's say one of the things I want them to do is to try a particular style of eating for a week. And so I'll say, if I send you some of my favorite recipes that are within these parameters, will you try them? And that gives them a much easier yes, right? So then I've taken off of their plate some of the responsibility of finding the recipes, and then I've got some skin in the game as well. And so if I've got skin in the game, they can have skin in the game. So I'll sort of employ that type of tactic. But the one that's harder to get around, the type of excuse that's harder to get around is around other people. So, for example, I have a client right now, again, sort of working on the nutrition side of things. Her family does not want to change the way that they eat. And so she's trying to change the way that she eats, but her family doesn't want to change the way that they eat. And so she's having to cook all of these multiple meals so that she can eat well and her family can eat the way that they want to eat. And part of that is reality, but part of it is also story. And so, we sort of start to break down the story together. And then I always encourage my clients to have the conversation. Instead of going into the grocery store, buying all the things that she wants to make for herself in the way that she wants to eat, and then making a meal that she already knows her family's probably not going to enjoy. They're probably going to complain about it, but she doesn't preface it, right? She doesn't give them any opportunity to buy in. She doesn't give them any opportunity to support her. She's just initiating. She's essentially doing to them what many of her previous practitioners has done to her, right? So instead of doing what I did with her, which is going through the process of establishing buy-in, preparing the way for change, like having all of the conversations that get her to say, yes, I'm going to try this. Instead, she's trying to impose change really suddenly on her family, and then she's getting the backlash from that. And then she's using that experience to say, oh, my family won't do this with me. And so we sort of break apart the story, and it almost always boils down to something like this, right? Like a conversation hasn't been had. And then we prepare for having that conversation, right? We sort of talk about pulling in the support network, going to her family, going to her kids, they're teenagers, they want to eat junk food, and saying, hey, showing them the reports, showing them the blood work, showing them the doctor's recommendations, and saying, listen, this is the reality of my health right now. If I don't start eating better, these are the subsequent realities of the consequences. I need your support in this. And allowing them to say, yes, I'm willing to support you. Let's do this together, right? And all of the different types of conversations that we need to have with the people in our lives in order to garner the support that we need. But that's a very specific example, but sort of going back to the biggest hurdle in my experience is this thing here. It really doesn't want to change. Like evolutionarily designed to create habits. Even our neural pathways, we have the saying, what fires together, or is that right? Fires together, wires together. Yeah. Everything, if you think about your brain as a highway, every time you do something in the same way, or you think the same thought, or you drive the same way to the grocery store or to work or to childcare or whatever, that is a literal pathway in your brain that gets reinforced. It's a physical thing. It's not this ephemeral thing. It's a very physical thing. And the more each pathway gets used, the more ingrained it is physically in our brain. Just like if you drove, on a muddy road, the more you drive on it, the deeper that rut becomes. It's the same here. And so it's very difficult to change this. It doesn't want to do it. We have to be super intentional about it. And then it will come up with all of these stories and reasons why this change isn't possible and it can't happen, right? Because it's protecting itself. It's like a kid who's being told, no, you're going to eat that broccoli. And it's like, no, I won't eat that broccoli. And, your brain is just basically throwing a temper tantrum. And so we have to build a cognitive awareness of the temper tantrum and then start to pull it apart, and the more you tease apart the temper tantrum, the more you can, just the way you do with a child, you can show it the rationality, right? But it's a complex thing. It's partially it's calming the nervous system around the temper tantrum, you got to hug the baby. Partially it's introducing some logic, right? You got to teach the child that it's important to eat broccoli. Partially it's making it a little bit more feasible, like maybe you put some cheese on the broccoli, but he's sort of like, it's in this way of moving around this thing up here.
And that's even a saying that we have, feeling like you're stuck in a rut.
Yeah, exactly.
You feel like you're stuck in a rut. You've tried everything. You're still in pain. You don't know what else to do. And it's because most of us are repeating the same pathway that's been established. And that pathway in the brain has become a rut. And it's a deep, attractive pathway that we follow, because the body and the mind follows a path of least resistance in many cases. And now, like you said, we have to identify what that problem is, what that pathway is, and then bring an awareness and consciousness to that pathway, and then dissect it. Break it apart in smaller pieces, because it's going to be too overwhelming to tackle it all at once. And there's going to be mental pushback, just like what you were saying with the family members, that if you suggest a big change, there's going to be pushback because the change is difficult to adopt. Yeah. But if you can break it apart, then it's going to be more digestible and consumable, and you'll have more success with it. So that's really, really good. I think that system and approach makes a lot of sense to me. I know that that's based in research as well, based in neuroscience and in psychology. So I know that it works.
Yeah. Thank you.
Well, good. Well, if somebody wanted to get in touch with you and learn more about what you do, feel free to share that with them. And also, I leave a little bit of time at the end. If you have any kind of free gift or any way, I didn't really mention that to you before, but if you have an ebook, or if you have some kind of program or something that you'd like to offer, maybe one person even, feel free to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you want to find me, I'm on all of the social medias. My name, Christina Wehry, very easy. It's on the title of this presentation, so I'm sure you could find the correct spelling. Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, all of the things, just, Christina Wehry and I will pop up. My website is www.completewellbeing.co. And I'm actually really happy to give 15-minute free consultations. We can sort of do a pain roadmap, sort of identify what's going on in the body and some, simple changes that you might be able to create. For anyone who's interested, shoot me an email. Just go to my website. There's a form at the bottom, or you can direct message me on any of the other social media platforms. Just let me know how you found me, and we'll get that scheduled.
Well, great. Thank you for your wisdom. Thanks for sharing us your system and a little bit about what we could do to create some positive, long-lasting change to get out of pain and to live healthier.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure and an honor.
Have a great day. Thank you.
You also.